Basically the Catholic Church.
Yeah, you're jumping the gun, Dave. You know too much.
Yeah.
But I'll actually show you the documents, which are actually really interesting in terms of why it happened, right? All right, let me open it up and we'll jump in. All right, so we'll start really easy, right? So we have Genesis chapter 2 right there in the beginning of the Bible. The Sabbath is introduced. One of the reasons why this is important is a lot of people will say, well, the Sabbath is for the Jews, right? The Sabbath was created for Judaism, for the Jews. The problem with that, of course, is Judaism only begins with Abraham, right? Abraham is the father, that's why he's called the father of Israel, right? The father of Father Abraham kind of a thing. So God chooses Abraham and creates a religion through him, creates a people through him. What that means is all the other generations before Abraham weren't Jews. They were just people, humans, right? So Adam and Eve were not Jewish. They were humans. Noah, Cain and Abel and Seth and all of those kind of generations leading up to then Abraham are just people. There wasn't a Jewish nation yet. There wasn't Judaism yet. And yet, before Judaism, we already have the Sabbath, right? The Sabbath is created right in the beginning of the world. It's on the seventh day. And three main things here. So let me read here quick. Thus the heavens and the earth and all the host of them were finished. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had done, and he rested on the Sabbath, or rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. So he does three things there. Because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made. So the first thing is he gives us the example. He rests, all right? And that is the key purpose of the Sabbath. The Sabbath was created for us to help us literally physically, right? Like, I don't know about you guys, but I know the Portuguese people, if they're not told not to work, they'll work 7 days a week, all right? I know guys that work 7 days a week, these construction guys that they work their job for 5 days, and then on the weekends, they do private jobs. And a lot of people are like that. Money is important, so they work until they die. And God's like, listen, that's not how I made you. I need you guys to rest, right? I need you guys to take a day off. So God does the example for us. He rests on that day. He blesses that day. So physically, it's good, but then he gives a spiritual blessing to it. And I can get way deep into this, but basically, there's multiple blessings here. The first one is not just a physical rest of your body, but a rest of your mind, right? A rest of your problems, a rest of the things that you're dealing with and struggling with and fighting with and all of these things. The Sabbath is a day we're supposed to kind of forget about the world and just focus on God. And God allows you to do that. He'll actually give you that space so that you can kind of distance yourself from your problems. And you get to like mentally rest because of that. And then, of course, the other blessing is that you get to spend time with God, you get to learn about God, and you get to build a relationship with God, which then gives you a future, right? So the blessing covers the physical, the mental, and the spiritual side. I'm just coding over it there. You can go a lot deeper than that, but not today. And then he sanctified it. The word sanctified means he set apart, or he made holy, he made separate. Because I know there's a lot of people that say, it doesn't matter what day it is. As long as you take a day off, that's what matters. Humanly speaking, that's accurate, right? Your body just needs 1 day a week. They've actually done studies and they've discovered that, yeah, the human body actually works on a 7-day cycle, right? You need that 1 day a week off to kind of say optimal, right? And a lot of people say, well, it doesn't matter what day it is, as long as you take a day off. The difference, of course, is, and this is where you being a Christian becomes important. Are you going to follow just human ideas, or are you going to follow God? God told you that, or God is telling you that he himself separated the Sabbath, right? I'm making this day special for us. You could choose a different day, but I always compare that to imagine you meet someone and you decide to go on a date with them. And the person's like, okay, I'll meet you at so-and-so restaurant Thursday night, 7 o'clock. All right. Okay, fine, good. And then during the week, you're like, Thursday's not good for me. I'm going to go on Friday. So the person goes there on Thursday, you never show up. And then you go there on Friday. You still get a meal out of it, right? You still get something out of it, but you didn't actually spend time with the person, right? And this is what God is basically doing. He's like, listen, I'm setting a date night once a week for you and me. This is a time for us, right? You could choose a different day, but it's not the day that God has chosen, right? So then it's just that decision that you got to make. Am I going to follow humans and their ideas, or am I going to follow what God created for me? All right. But this is, again, I'm going really, really quickly because I actually want to get into a whole other aspect of this. And here it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to figure out when exactly did it switch. All right. When did Saturday become Sunday? When did the Sabbath become the Lord's Day Sunday kind of a thing? Did it happen with Jesus while he was still alive? That's the first question, right? Because if anyone changed it, it would have been Jesus. So was there a day where Jesus went, okay, guys, you're my disciples, you're my people. We're going to do something completely different. We're not going to go to church on Saturday anymore. We're going to go on Sunday. Is that biblical? Do we find that anywhere in the Bible? Well, the answer is right here. This is Luke 4. And I'll just read it here quickly. Then Jesus returned in the power of the Spirit to Galilee, and news of him went out throughout all the surrounding region, and he taught in their synagogues, being glorified by all. So it's just talking about Jesus's daily life. Verse 16, the important one. So he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up to read. All right. So what was Jesus's custom? To go to church or synagogue on Saturday, which makes sense because Jesus was a Jewish man, right? He was raised in a Jewish family. He was raised in a Jewish city. He followed all the Jewish rules, right? Biblical rules, not the man-made rules, but the biblical ones. And that includes Sabbath. So as his custom was to go to church every Saturday. So Jesus himself in his lifetime didn't change it. His custom was to always go to church on Saturday. Jesus never changed that while he was alive. Now, perhaps it was like his last will and testament. Perhaps, right before he died, he gave them a message. He told his disciples, listen, I'm about to die. Everything's going to change. So, I'm going to resurrect on Sunday. And from now on, it's going to be Sunday. That would make sense, right? Because a lot of people say that. They keep the Sunday because Jesus resurrected on Sunday. So it makes sense that Jesus would have told them, I'm going to die, but I'm going to resurrect on Sunday. And that's going to be the signal that we're going to start keeping Sunday. So let's see if that's the case. Matthew, sorry. Well, let me read that first and then we can go back. So Luke 23, this is talking about when Jesus dies. All right. So that's the time period. We looked at while Jesus was alive. So now let's look at Jesus' death and see if any changes happen. Then he took it down, wrapped it in linen, and laid it in a tomb that was hewn out of the rock. So it's talking about how Jesus was put into that tomb, right? Friday night, where no one had ever been laid. That day was the preparation, and the Sabbath drew near. So for the Jews, Friday is actually called the preparation day. You get ready for the Sabbath, all right? And so it's purposefully telling us this. Listen, they quickly took Jesus' body off the cross. They put him in the tomb. And it's saying, and this was all done on the preparation day. And that Sabbath was quickly coming, was drawing near, right? Was quickly coming forward. So let's see his disciples. Let's see his followers, what they do. And the women who had come with him from Galilee followed after, and they observed the tomb and how his body was laid. Then they returned and prepared spices and fragrant oils. Now, this was common. When someone died, when you actually put them in the tomb, you would like embalm them. You would put spices and perfumes and stuff like that, and then put that in between the wrappings of the body. So Mary Magdalene, for instance, when she washes Jesus' hair with perfume with her hair, and Jesus says, she's preparing me for my burial, right? Pointing towards this ceremony that they would do. Now, they would always have to do it before they seal the tomb. But there's a problem. Saturday is right around the corner. They don't have enough time. So look at what happens. So it says, the 56 again, then they returned and prepared spices and fragrant oil. So they went home and got the spices already. and they rested on the Sabbath according to the commandment. Which means at his death, Jesus didn't say anything. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done that. You know, if Jesus had said, listen, Saturday isn't, or Sabbath isn't Saturday anymore, now it's Sunday, then they could have been like, oh, then we have time. Let's embalm the body. Let's put the spices, everything like that. But they didn't do it because Jesus never said it. In fact, they kept the Sabbath even at his death, right? You could even argue that Jesus even kept the Sabbath, right? He died on Friday. He could have resurrected on Saturday, right? There's no reason why he couldn't. But he rests on the Sabbath. He does no work on that day and then resurrects the next day, right? On the Sunday. But his followers for sure still kept the Sabbath. It's making it very clear that they still kept that day. So we've looked at Jesus's life. We've looked at Jesus's death. So there's only one other option, right? Biblically speaking, as to when the day could have been changed, which was the apostles, right? So the original 11, including Paul, who became the 12th apostle, if it was changed biblically, it would have to be through them, right? Maybe Jesus told them about Sunday. Maybe they didn't understand until afterwards, and then they introduced it into the church. That's a possibility, right? So let's see what the custom was of the apostles after Jesus's death. So he's died on the cross, in the grave for 3 days. He's resurrected. He's gone back up to heaven. All right. Jesus has done his work here on earth. So if he's told them something, it's already happened. So let's see how the apostles and Paul react. Let's see how they live their lives. Acts chapter 17, verse 2 and 3. Then Paul, as his custom was, very similar to Jesus, right, went to them and for 3 Sabbaths reasoned with them from the scriptures, explaining and demonstrating that the Christ had to suffer and rise again from the dead, and saying, this Jesus whom I preach to you is the Christ. All right, so now we have an issue, because what we're seeing is during Jesus's life, his custom was the Sabbath, was Saturday. During his death, they kept the Saturday, they kept the Sabbath. After his death, during Paul, right, the apostles, they're still keeping the Sabbath. That's their custom. Nothing's changed. So something is going on here, but let's make sure. Acts 13. So this is an interesting story. This one's really important because it's going to really nail down the fact that it didn't change. All right, not during the Bible time, anyways. Acts 13. So when the Jews went out of the synagogue, so Paul has gone into a new city. First thing that he does, right? Sabbath comes along, he goes to the synagogue. That's his custom. The Gentiles begged that these words might be preached to them next Sabbath. All right. So basically what happens here is Paul goes into a synagogue, a Jewish synagogue, but there's non-Jews there too that like to listen. The Jews reject him. You know, the majority of the Jews reject him. But the Gentiles, the non-Jewish people, they go to Paul and they're like, no, we want to hear this again. You know, come back next week, come back next Saturday and tell us more about this Jesus. Now, this would have been a perfect opportunity, right? This would be a perfect opportunity for Paul to go like this. Listen, we don't have to wait a week because this Saturday isn't the real day anyways. We can meet tomorrow. Tomorrow is the Lord's day, right? It's God's day. So I could just meet you tomorrow. We'll be worshiping God on the right day, and I can tell you all about Jesus. And again, remember who he's talking to, Gentiles. These are non-Jewish people. So if anyone's going to accept Sunday, it's them, right? So this would have been perfect for Paul to bring in that message. Is that what happens? Let's see. Verse 43. Now, when the congregation had broken up, many of the Jews and devout proselytes followed Paul and Barnabas, who speaking to them persuaded them to continue in the grace of God. Now, do they meet on Sunday? No. Look at verse 44. On the next Sabbath, almost the whole city came together to hear the word of God. That whole city means a lot more non-Jews than Jews. These are Gentiles. These are people that do not keep the Sabbath. And yet Paul chooses the Sabbath to preach to them, which is very odd if the day had been changed. It makes no sense, in fact. He would have pushed for Sunday, avoided the Jewish fighting that was going on because they didn't want to hear him. He could have had his Sunday, it would have been clean. He doesn't do that. He keeps the Saturday because that's his custom. But when the Jews saw the multitudes, they were filled with envy, and contradicting and blaspheming, they opposed the things spoken by Paul. All right. So again, perfect example here. It would have been so easy. You avoid the Jews, let them have their day. Let me meet the Gentiles on the right day, Sunday. But we don't see that in the Bible. We see Paul talking to non-Jews, to Gentiles, and still using the Sabbath as his custom, as his regular day of going to church or to synagogue. Acts 18. After these things, Paul departed from Athens and went to Corinth. That's verse 4. I'm going to jump to that's verse 1. I'm going to jump to verse 4 just because you can read it for yourself, the in-between. There's nothing really important there. But notice that he's going to Athens. He went from Athens to Corinth. These are non-Jewish cities. These are as Greek as they come. All right. These are very Greek cities. So perfect opportunity to preach on Sunday if that was the right day. But look at what he does. Verse 4. And he reasoned in the synagogue every Sabbath and persuaded both Jews and Greeks. He didn't separate. He didn't take the Greeks on Sunday. Everything was done on Saturday, which means during Jesus's life, they kept the Sabbath. During Jesus's death, they kept the Sabbath. After Jesus resurrected and went back to heaven, the apostles still kept the Sabbath. During the Bible time, it doesn't change. All right. So how do we explain this? Well, let's look at a few verses first, because I always like to play devil's advocate. I want to read the verses that the Sunday following people use. All right. They say, listen, the Sabbath is up to us, kind of a thing. We get to decide, we worship Jesus because he resurrected on Sunday. We make that decision, even though it's not biblical. It's never mentioned to do that in the Bible. So let's read here. Mark 2, starting from verse 23. Now it happened that he went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and as they went, his disciples began to pluck the heads of grain. So it's on Saturday, and they just eat. They're hungry, right? So they eat the grains. And the Pharisees said to him, look, why do you do what is not lawful on the Sabbath? And he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, the Son of Man is also Lord of the Sabbath. Or in other words, I'm the Lord of the Sabbath. If anyone's going to change the day, it's me. The problem is, of course, Jesus never changed it. In fact, now I'm going to go back to this. We've read this already before, but here it makes a lot more sense. All right. Talking about the laws, which include the Sabbath. Matthew chapter 5. Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. So the first thing that we learn is that the laws were not taken away. We've studied that already. Verse 18, for surely I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, or until the world ends, not one jot or one tittle will by any means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. So the law won't be changed, not until at least the end of the world, until Jesus comes back. So the idea that Jesus changed it is completely unbiblical. All right. The idea that the Bible teaches that it was changed or that Jesus changed it is not biblical. It would be contradicting itself. All right. Let me jump ahead again. But let me use a couple of the verses that people use to say, see, this supports Sunday as the day of worship. And we'll see what it actually says here. So for this verse, I specifically use the New Revised Standard Version. This is the version that the actual Catholic Church uses. So I thought, I figured I'd use their main source there. This is what it says, 1 Corinthians chapter 16. Now concerning the collection for the saints, you should follow directions I gave to the churches in Galatia. On the first day of every week, Sunday, right? That's actually talking about Sunday there. It's the first day. Each of you is to put aside and save whatever extra you earn, so that collections need not be taken when I come. All right. So people read this verse and they say, see, they're taking offerings on Sunday. If they're taking offerings, then they must be at church, right? So obviously they were going to church on Sunday. except that's not what it's saying. Let's actually read it again. Let me read it nice and careful here. So now concerning the collection for the saints, so this is a specific money that Paul is going to receive and take to Jerusalem. All right, that's what he's calling the saints here. You should follow the directions I gave to the churches in Galatia. So it's the same thing he taught the church there in Galatia, the Galatians. So he's saying on the first day of the week, each of you is to put aside and save whatever extra you learn. He's not saying take what you earn and put it in a basket or put it in a pool or give it at church. He's literally saying at the first day of the week, you know what you've earned all the week before, everything that put aside some of your profit. When he says put aside, he means like at home. He means, build a little pool so that when I come, everyone can just bring it all together and I can just take it. All right. They're not collecting this in church. It's actually very, very clear that they're not doing that. He's basically saying when you're at home at the beginning of the week, once you've seen everything that, all the profits for the week before, just, almost like put it in the bank, just take a little bit to the side and save it. Notice that the word there is save. It doesn't say give. It says save it so that collections need not be taken when I come. All right. That way, right before Paul comes, all the money gets pooled together. He shows up and they just take it. This isn't talking about church. In fact, this is just talking about saving money for a ministry. This is talking about saving it for the future. So in no way is this actually talking about going to church on Sunday. It just happens to be on Sunday because one, the Bible teaches that you shouldn't be doing finances and stuff on the Sabbath. So do it on the Sunday. On the Sunday, look at your finances and see how much you can put aside by yourself there at home so that when Paul does come, you can just give the lump sum. That's all this is saying. All right. Let's read another one. This is Acts chapter 20. And again, this one's used to say, no, look, see, they came together for church, right? Let's see what it actually says here. All right. Now, on the first day of the week, Sunday, so it's absolutely right? They're meeting on Sunday. Now, on the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, so they are coming together, Paul, ready to depart the next day, spoke to them and continued his message until midnight. Okay. So it says that they're coming together to break bread. Does that mean church? Well, Acts actually talks about this. When would they break bread together? Was it on Sundays? Was it a church thing? No. Verse 46 of Acts 2. So continually daily. So this is something they did every day with one accord in the temple and breaking bread from house to house. They ate their food with gladness and simplicity of heart, praising God and having favor with all people. And the Lord added to the church daily those who were being saved. So just because it says on the first day of the week, they ate bread together, it doesn't mean that they're going to church. It just means they were doing what they always did. They got together. That's what the early church did. The Christians would come together. They would eat together. They would spend time together. And yeah, they would worship. But they worshiped every day, right? They would pray to God every day, just like we do. Well, right before we eat, we pray. So that's the first half. But then he says, no, but Paul was preaching, right? Paul was preaching. So let me read that second part. Paul, ready to depart the next day, spoke to them and continued his message until midnight. Now we have a bit of a problem. Either this is the longest sermon in history, right? Because when do you go to church, regardless of whether it's Saturday or Sunday? You go in the morning, right? That is a tradition since the beginning. You go to synagogue or you go to church in the morning, usually 9, 10 a.m. And then you have the service and then you go home, right? But here it's saying, if this is Sunday morning, all right, and I'm putting the word if there. If this is Sunday morning, that means Paul would have started preaching at about 10 o'clock in the morning, and he would have preached all the way until midnight, which means that he preached for about 14 hours. you could like read the whole Bible in 14 hours kind of a thing. So is this really a service again? The answer is no, it makes no sense. This isn't normal, right? Someone won't preach from Sunday morning when people go to church all the way until midnight. Because it actually says he spoke to them and continued his message until midnight. So this was one long message, right? So how do we explain this? Did they meet at 10 a.m. Sunday to hear a message? All right, to answer this, we have to forget how we see the days of the week, and we have to see how the Jews or how the Bible people saw days of the week. To do that, we're going to go right to Genesis, all right? And I'm going straight to the main points. This is how a Bible person views a day. So this is what a day looks like to a Jewish person. So this is all the creation days. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Verse 8, or verse 8, yeah. Evening and the morning were the second day. Evening and the morning, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day. The way the days work in the Bible, well, let me explain our version first. So right now it's Tuesday, right? Wednesday, according to like the world standard, Wednesday would start when? When does Wednesday start? Anybody? Gotta take it off mute if you're giving the answer. Kwaku, give me the answer.
I guess it puts at midnight.
Midnight, yeah. So according to like American Standard Time or whatever, Wednesday starts at midnight. That's not how the Bible teaches days, all right? The day starts at evening. So when the sun goes down. When the sun goes down, which I think it's already done. Let me check. Yeah, at least here it has. It's the next day already. So we're actually already on Wednesday, all right? Because that's when the beginning of the day happens. It begins at sundown. So when does Sunday, let me go back here. When does the first day of the week actually begin? It doesn't begin at midnight. It begins Saturday at sundown. All right. So when it says that they met together on the first day of the week to break bread, what that actually means, and I'm going to prove it because of the second part, is they met at sundown. All right. They got together at sundown at somebody's house to break bread. Okay. How do we know that? Because he preached until midnight. All right. This isn't for one thing, they don't think the way we think. So Sunday doesn't begin, when you wake up or whatever. Sunday, begins at sundown. So that would be the first day of the week already. The fact that he preaches until midnight makes a lot more sense that, let's say 7 o'clock sunset around that time. So 7 o'clock happens. First they eat together, right? So that's probably an hour, maybe even more. So let's say 8 o'clock though. Let's just round it off. 8 o'clock, Paul starts preaching. He preaches until midnight. That's about 4 hours, which for us is long, but in Bible days, that's an actual standard sermon. It's about a 4 or 5 hour sermon. They would expand on the words of God. That makes perfect sense. All right. But notice what that would mean to us. The way we would see that, if this was written in the way we see the days, this would actually say, so the apostles got together Saturday night or Saturday evening. They ate together, they broke bread together, and then Paul gave a message until midnight, which means that they were together Saturday, right? They went to church on Saturday. They went to synagogue Saturday morning. And then at evening time, they got together at someone's house. They broke bread. And then Paul continued his message until midnight. So in fact, not only does this not prove Sunday, it actually proves Saturday when you actually look at how the days work in the Bible and when you actually look at the wording itself, right? The idea that they broke bread. So this isn't a service. This is something afterwards. This is a social afterwards, after the service they had on Saturday, which would be their custom. And from sundown until midnight, Paul was preaching. which makes a lot more sense, right? Instead of thinking that Paul preached for 14 hours. So this verse actually teaches the exact opposite that a lot of Sunday churches try to teach. Revelation 1, this is another one that's used because here it talks about the Lord's day, right? So Revelation 1 verse 9, I, John, both your brother and companion in the tribulation and kingdom and patience of Jesus Christ, was on the island that is called Patmos for the word of God and for the testimony of Jesus. I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a loud voice as of a trumpet. All right. So this, the church says, see, he was keeping Sunday because it's the Lord's day. Here's the problem. In Bible times, the Lord's day didn't mean Sunday. And I'm going to prove that using history now. But in fact, the Lord's day was very clearly Saturday. Again, just like Paul, John's custom would be to keep the Sabbath. Not only that, but it doesn't actually say that he went to church or anything like that. He was just in the Spirit. He got a vision on the Lord's day. It actually doesn't tell us what the Lord's day is. But we know, and we're going to show this through history, that the Lord's day didn't mean Sunday yet. In the future, it would be. Today, for instance, the Lord's day is known as Sunday, especially in Catholic focused countries, right? Domini, right? The Sunday means the Lord's day. But that's recent compared to the Bible, all right? So let's actually show it. Where does the word Sunday come from? Well, you can see it right in the word, right? The day of the sun, right? Sunday. It actually comes from Old English or Germanic Sunendag or Sunan day, because that day there is actually day in Gaelic. And the word Sunan day is actually an interpretation of the Latin dies solis, which is literally the sun's day. So the Germanic North mythology actually worshipped a sun goddess whose name was Suna or Sol. All right. So Sunday literally means the day of the sun, the day that we worship the sun. All right. Now, did this also happen in Rome when it became Christian? Well, that's what we're going to learn now. So in Rome, there was a cult. There was this religious cult that was called Sol Invictus, all right, which is literally the worship of the sun, all right? So Sol Invictus, on the other hand, was a Syrian sun god. So the Romans actually took it from the Syrians, whose cult was first promoted in Rome under Elagabalus. And you can look this up on Wikipedia and study it for yourself if you want, without success. So he tried to bring in sun worship into Rome, didn't really accept it. They kept worshiping Caesar, right? Some 50 years later, however, on December 25th, 274, now look at these dates. These dates become important, all right? So at about 274 AD, that's the main number that I want you to remember, the Roman Emperor Aurelian did succeed in establishing the cult of Sol Invictus as an official religion alongside the Roman cults, all right? So in 274, Rome started worshiping the sun. All right, Sol Invictus, this cult worship of the sun, it became an official religion in Rome. All right, 274. Remember that number. So there was a general agreement from Aurelian to Constantine. Now, Constantine is the famous one that becomes a Christian, right? There was a general agreement that from Aurelian to Constantine I, Sol was of supreme importance until Constantine abandoned Sol in favor of Christianity. So the early years of Constantine worshipped Sol Invictus. He worshipped the sun. If you know history, one day he had this dream. He saw a cross in the sky, and he decided that God wanted him to be a Christian. All right. That same day, he got his army. He marched them through a river, just a little stream, a little river that was there in Rome. When they crossed over the other side, he's like, congratulations, you all just got baptized. You're all Christians now. No one chose it, right? When Constantine chose to become a Christian, he forced Christianity on the empire, all right, on Rome. But here's the problem. Up until that point, even himself they were worshiping the sun. And one of the main aspects of that was Sunday worship, right? Worshiping the sun god on Sunday, right? So the last inscription referring to Sol Invictus dates to 387. So remember this date. So in 274, it begins, and at 387, it's the last time that it's mentioned. So we're talking over 100 years, about 110 years, that sun worship is a main form of worship in Rome. This is the same time that the Christian church is growing in Rome, and then of course explodes when Constantine becomes a Christian and then forces Christianity on everyone. And there were enough devotees in the 5th century that Christian theologian Augustine found it necessary to preach against them. So a lot of people were still preaching sun worship. Why? Because the people were forced to become Christians. All right. It's a very similar thing happened in Mexico. So the Catholic Church went to Mexico. They baptized the population there. And they basically said, now you guys are Catholics, now you guys are Christians. But there was a specific day out of the year where the indigenous people there would worship their dead. All right. Literally called the Day of the Dead. Right. So they would make food and put pictures, and they would remember their ancestors, and that's part of their religion. The Catholic Church tried to outlaw it. They said, no, this isn't Catholic, this isn't Christian, you guys can't do that. But nobody listened. And so they were Catholics, Christians, but they still kept the Day of the Dead. So finally, what does the Catholic Church do? They're like, okay, if you guys aren't going to stop it, then we'll just adopt it. From now on, we're not calling it the Day of the Dead anymore. Now we're calling it Halloween, right? Hallows Eve, or the All Saints Day, right? The Day of the Dead Saints. And so they Christianized it. They made it Catholic. They made it Christian. Sunday was the exact same thing. So these people were forced into Christianity, but they were worshiping the sun god on Sunday. So what they decided was, okay, you can keep that day, you can keep worshiping on that day, but instead of calling it the sun, you're now going to call it the Son of God. So it's not the S-U-N anymore. Now it's the S-O-N. Now you're worshiping Jesus on Sunday. All right. And quite a few other laws were done the same way. If you go to Rome now, you'll go into quite a few Catholic churches, and you'll see these big statues there. One interesting one, I believe, is of Moses. What's odd about Moses is that there's a big horn that comes out of his forehead. And you might wonder, well, why is there a horn coming out of Moses's head? And the answer is because it's not Moses. That was a Roman god that the people were used to worshiping, and they wouldn't stop. And so this new Christian country, this new Christian empire, basically said, okay, you can keep worshiping it, but call it Moses from now on. Don't call it Mars. So this isn't Venus anymore. Now it's the Virgin Mother. This isn't so-and-so. Now it's Peter. This was John. So they just renamed all the Roman gods, which is why they look different in some of the churches. Weren't churches. These were temples to other gods that were Christianized. They were transformed into part of the Christian religion. All right. And Sunday is the same thing. They simply renamed it. They rebranded it into a Christian thing. In fact, if you study it, when Christianity was basically forced on Rome, they kept both days. They kept the Sabbath and Sunday until finally, because of their hatred for the Jews, they basically said, okay, let's just give Saturday to the Jews and we'll keep Sunday. And then that true split began. But that comes literally hundreds of years after Jesus. All right. So let me go back to the dates here. So Sol Invictus begins at 274. Constantine is a worshiper of Sol Invictus, but then he converts in in around 312. All right. His formal conversion is at around 312, and that's almost universally acknowledged among historians. Some claim that he was actually only truly converted when he was baptized at his death at 337. Regardless, look at these dates, all right? 312 and 337. In 313, Constantine actually issued the Edict of Milan, which decriminalized Christian worship, right? So he kind of made it a legal religion and kind of forced Rome to become Christian. However, we have a document, and this is actually historical. You can find this document. This was written March 7, 321. All right. This is about 10 years after he became a Christian. This is about 9 years after he made Christianity a legal religion. So this is still Constantine. This is a decree written by Constantine called Dies Solis, Day of the Sun, Sunday, as the Roman day of rest. And this is what he actually says. This was what's actually written. On the venerable day of the sun, let the magistrates and people residing in the cities rest, and let all workshops be closed. In the country, however, persons engaging in agriculture may freely and lawfully continue their pursuits, because it often happens that another day is not suitable for grain sowing or vine planting, lest by neglecting the proper moment for such operations, the bounty of heaven should be lost. So realize that even though he's already a Christian, right? He's accepted Christianity. He's made it a legal religion. He's still pushing this Dies Solis religion, or this day of the sun. All right. And you can see how they overlap each other. You can see how then Christianity becomes mixed with this sun worship. All right. This Dies Solis, this day of the sun, the worship of Sunday. Just to push the point, sun worship isn't isolated. All of these are paintings and sculptures and stuff from literally things from all over the world. So you have the Egyptians. So you have Ra here. What's over his head? You have the symbol of the sun. This is Kushan. This is Buddha. What's behind Buddha? It's the sun. Here's another Buddha drawing. This is from a different country, however, and you have the flames of the sun around him, the sun around his head. Another one here. This is from the 11th century. The sun around this god. You move into Hinduism, you got the sun behind their god, Vishnu, the sun behind them. This is Chinese religions, you got the sun behind them. And even in Tibet, again, the sun symbol behind the gods. And of course, you see it in Christian art, right? You've probably seen the halo, right? The halo around people's heads. The word halo literally means sun in Latin. So it's literally the sun above your head. And literally in paintings, you would have the sun image, even with the rays, right? In a lot of images, you'll see the cross with a sun behind it, right? With the rays of the sun behind. All of this isn't Christian. None of this is found in the Bible. Nowhere in the Bible does it say to worship the sun. But it is found all over the place in pagan religions, all right, which Rome loved, including Solus Deus, right? This Sol Invictus, this worship of the sun deity. So art, history, the Bible, all of it shows us that the biblical day of worship, the one that God created, is Saturday. It's as simple as that. Sunday was merged into the religion because the pagans who were forced into Christianity wouldn't give it up. And so to avoid a hassle and to avoid a fight, they just incorporated it. They brought it into Christianity. But it's not found in the Bible. In fact, it goes completely against what Jesus says himself, right? I will not destroy the law. I will not change the law. I'm not going to change a day. One thing that I really do like about Catholicism, though, I really give them a lot of credit. Protestantism make up excuses. They try to use the Bible to explain that Jesus changed the day, and that's just ridiculous. We've read the verses. There's nothing there. So I actually give more credit to the Catholics than to the Protestants. The Protestants are just lying to themselves. The Catholics, they at least tell the truth. All right. This is found. This is in an old catechism. This is from Reverend Stephen Keenan, a doctrinal catechism written back in 1851. So this is a Catholic document. And look at what it says about Saturday and Sunday. So, question, which is the Sabbath day? Answer, Saturday is the Sabbath day. All right, so far so good, right? Question, why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Good question, right? If you just told me that the Sabbath is Saturday, then why in the world am I keeping Sunday? Look at their answer. They're not going to lie here. They're just going to tell us the truth. We observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Council of Laodicea in 336, look at that date, all around that time when Sol Invictus was all strong, right? People were worshiping the sun, and the church was, and Christianity was being forced on the people. Well, they had a meeting. All the bishops had a meeting, and they decided, well, let me keep reading. I want to let them speak for themselves. The Council of Laodicea in 336 AD transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. All right, this is from 1957, another catechism. The Catechism of the Council of Trent, translated by John A. McHugh, Charles, blah, 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 says this, states, but the Church of God has thought it well to transfer the celebration and observance of Sabbath to Sunday. Or in other words, what they're saying is, listen, we changed it, period. It's not in the Bible. It's not something Jesus taught us. We decided that it was best to transfer what made Sabbath Saturday special into Sunday, all right? Realize, however, that when they say that, they're basically saying our decisions are more important than God's decisions. Even though God made a decision for Saturday, we think it's just better to just do it on Sunday, all right? But at least they're telling the truth. And then it goes further. Question, have you any other way of proving that the church has power to institute festivals or precepts? Or in other words, does the church have the authority to make that kind of a change, right? Because it's in the Bible. How can you go against the Bible? Look at their answer, and their answer is brilliant. It says this, had she not such power, she could not have done that in which all modern religionists agree with her. She could not have substituted the observance of Sunday for the first day of the week for the observance of Saturday, the seventh day, a change for which there is no scriptural authority. Or in other words, they're like, listen, it's not in the Bible, period. And they're admitting this. They're making it very clear. Listen, there's nothing in the Bible that teaches that we're supposed to keep the Sunday. But the fact that the whole world keeps the Sunday because of a change that we made, and that's including non-Catholics, right? Most Protestants keep Sunday, right? And the Catholic Church is basically saying, listen, that's proof that we have the authority. We have the authority to change it because everyone agrees with us. Even those that aren't part of our religion agree with the change that we made. And then they say, a change for which there is no scriptural authority. All right. So I really appreciate the Catholic Church, to be honest. They're telling the truth. They're basically saying, listen, it was our choice. We believe we have the authority to change that. With that, I don't agree with, but at least they're being honest with it. They're not trying to manipulate the Bible or twist texts around. They're honest. They say, listen, there's no Bible evidence here, but we have the authority to change it. Any questions at all? I know this was kind of a long one, a lot of verses and stuff like that. But any questions regarding any of the verses or history, anything like that?
I just wanted to say that mom was saying, and I've seen this too, back in the old country in Portugal, being a very strict Catholic country. And I remember that when I was a kid, I was only like, not even a teenager, but mom, she was older and she saw it too. When the sun goes down, people used to do the cross. You know how the Catholics, they do the cross?
Yeah, and kneel down.
Yeah. or kneel down. I saw in my town was a fishing town, and I saw people would kneel to where when the sun was rising or coming or sundown, and they would do the cross kneeling. So that's how
You can see how it's mixed together, right? So they're
tradition,
doing a
yeah.
cross, which is Christian,
Yeah,
but they're doing it
Yeah.
towards the sun, which is part of the
Yeah.
sun worship. Yeah.
very strict.
But no, you look at their arts, because I like art, right? So you look at early Christian paintings during the Catholic period, and you'll see the sun everywhere, you know, whether it's a halo, whether it's the sun behind them, and so on. A lot of times Jesus, if he's a little baby, he'll be holding the globe, the sun. And there's quite a lot of, you know, you can see how they mix the two ideas together. And it's just like they said, you know, they made that decision. It was to keep the peace. It was the only way that they could, that the people would accept becoming Christians. All right. So it's like, yeah, listen, we don't mind changing the names. We just don't want to change our traditions. We don't want to change how things are done, which honestly is the main reason why people keep going to church on Sunday. You know, when I show these things to them, they'll give me the same answer. Okay, yeah, but this is how I've always done it. You know, or it doesn't make a difference. As long as you worship God, that's what matters. And it's the same kind of thinking that created that problem in the first place. They're like, listen, I just want to worship God, but I want to do it my way. You know, I want to keep my traditions. I don't want to change my life all around. You know, I'm used to going to church on Sunday. I'm used to having Saturday off and so on. And it's a big change, right? So they said, no, I'm just going to stay the way it is. But again, that goes back to right at the beginning, the first few slides, right, where it says that God sanctified the Sabbath. That was God's decision. And Jesus makes it very clear that the Sabbath, you know, he is the Lord of the Sabbath. He decides what should happen with the Sabbath day. And not even the church. Even the church doesn't have that authority. Only God has that authority to make that change. Any other thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean that one like really talking because even because I grew up, my parents stayed go to church on Sunday and all that, right? So I mean, to me, I mean the reason being is like I was working at a place and I remember there was one man, so we used to go to church on Saturday, and I remember he asked me, "Do you go to church?" I was like, "Yeah, I used to go," and said that. He's like, "Well, there's a church in Oakville, but they go inside there." I'm like, "Whoa," right? So I gotta take that back step. But as growing up, there was one lady, like I think one of my family members used to go to church on Saturday. I still didn't understand it.
Yeah.
But then when they told me, I'm like, you know what? I'll just go, right? To me, growing up, I thought like going to church is a church. As long as you go, you know. But then obviously over the years, and when you read the scriptures, even when Israel in the desert, and God said that you shouldn't go on a Sabbath to call it the manna. And obviously the person was striking. So when I read all that stuff, it just and it's obvious, but it's not easy to change though.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very, really challenging.
Well, and not only that, I think one of the hardest things is, especially when you're older, I remember doing this study with someone that, you know, he was an altar boy. He's worked for all of this stuff. And I remember him saying, I can't believe this, because what it means is they've been lying to me this whole time. Right? It's like, how is it possible that so many people have been deceived, that so many people are following this man-made rule, right? They just changed it out of the blue, kind of a thing. And it's almost too shocking. It's too much of a, especially, and again, most of my family, by the way, is Catholic. I have no problems with Catholic. I find many of them to be super, you know, religious and sincere. I mean, I have an aunt, she goes to church every day. You know, she probably does more with church than I do, and I'm a pastor. And she's sincere about it, right? And so this isn't a knock at all about Catholicism or anything like that. especially not the people. I think the people are great people, very sincere. But it's just the reality of, and again, at the end of the day, you have to decide. And I don't push it. That's what, when I do these Bible studies, I always mention that. I'm not here to push this. All I'm saying is you have to make a decision. When it comes to how you worship God, you have to decide where your authority is going to come from. Is it going to come from God's word? Is it going to come from God, from Jesus, from what they said in the Bible? Or is it going to come from a bunch of people that made a decision? Because that's really what it comes down to. There was a bunch of bishops who saw the problems that were going around, right? All these people, they were used to worshiping on Sunday, worshiping the sun, all of these things. And they decided, you know what, to keep things easier, let's just bring it in. Let's just incorporate it. We'll keep Saturday and Sunday for a while, and so that's really the decision you have to make. Is where's your authority? What are you going to put your trust in? Is it going to be on people that were just trying to avoid a problem, or are you going to put it in God's word? Right? For me personally, I put it in God's word. When you read the Bible, Jesus, they all say the same thing. There's only one truth that you can really trust in, and that's the word of God. That's the one place where you can actually trust and depend and so on. And that even includes my own church's teachings, right? When I do the Bible studies, I make it very clear, I'm not teaching Adventism here. I'm not teaching, these are the doctrines that we believe in. I teach what the Bible is teaching, which means, and that's why even today, I go through the verses that people use for Sunday, and I say, okay, maybe they have a point. Maybe there's something here, so let's look at it. The problem is when you look at it, it's not there, right? But if at any time there's something that the Bible teaches that my church doesn't, I'm gonna choose the Bible over it, because the Bible is written by God, and the teachings of a church, whatever that church is made up by people. And for me, the Bible always has to win. The Bible always has to come first. But that's my decision. Everyone's got to make that decision. Everyone has to decide where their authority is going to come from, right? Where their truth is going to come from. Unfortunately, because a lot of people choose to not go the Bible way, that's why we have 1,001 different religions, right? I mean, how many Christianity groups are there? Every day there's like a new, another 100 popping in. And that's because they use the Bible, but not as their primary source or foundation. They use their own ideas mixed with the Bible, which means that you can have, every person can have their own religion, right? It's your own ideas. This is what I believe. This is what I think is right. You can choose that, but I prefer to see, okay, let me see it in the Bible. Let me see what the Bible says about this, from Genesis until Revelation. But all of us have to make that choice. It's as simple as that. You got to decide where your authority is going to be, who you're going to trust in. All right. All right, I'm going to stop recording here and we'll pray